And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and said, Call him. And they called the blind man, saying to him, Take heart, get up, he is calling you. And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, What do you want me to do for you? And the blind man said to him, Rabbi, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, Go your way, your faith has made you well. And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ. Please be seated. Except Lily. Lily, you come join me for just a moment. Yeah. We have another special for you today. Lily is going to share a bit of her testimony with us. So can I pray for you?
You can.
Okay. Father God, we thank you for Lily. And I just ask you, come, Holy Spirit. Come and bless your servant, Lily. May you give her your words as you have expressed yourself in her life. May she share with us in ways that not only blesses us, but we can really remember. And so give us ears to hear, hearts to receive, wills that are bent to your own, all for your glory. And I thank you for Lily. I ask your blessing upon her. It's in your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Good morning. My twin sister and I were born in Concord, Vermont in 1947, and we were baptized in the town next to it in St. Johnsbury. And my mom unfortunately didn't even realize that she was having twins. She had 3 older children, and surprise, I was first and Lucille was the surprise. So anyway, we lived in Vermont for a couple of years, and then we moved back to Connecticut for my father to find work. And we belonged to a Roman Catholic church, of course, down there where we grew up. And we made our communion, confirmation, and then I was actually married in that church. And after 11 years of a very bad marriage, a very sad marriage, my husband was a drug addict. And so, being the woman that I was, that I believed that marriage was for life, it was very, very difficult for me to divorce. It was like a very painful time in my life. And after that divorce happened, I looked upon my church for comfort, for someone to talk to emotionally, spiritually, but it never happened. They just weren't there for me. And I would go to church on Sundays, and I would spend, the whole time at church praying and doing whatever, and then I'd leave and I'd come home and I'd spend 2 hours crying because no one spoke to me. No one said how I'm doing or what's going on for you or anything. So after a few months went by of those Sundays that were just so painful to me, I stopped going to church. And I probably didn't go to church for about 15 years. I prayed. I loved my God, and I prayed and did all that I would normally do, but I just couldn't go there. Well, then my beautiful brother Vern talked to me and spoke to me and spoke to me, and he said, you need to come to church. He said, come. They were going to the Episcopal Church, and he said, why don't you come and at least try to see what you can do with us, And so I went. He said, you're going to love the pastor here. He's wonderful, and we have a wonderful family, church family. So I went, and of course I loved it. It was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And that I've told so many of you the story of my husband. The first day I went to church there, and I heard this beautiful voice singing. And I said to Vern, I said, who's that? He said, oh, that's Tom O'Keefe. Through the months, and as time went on, I followed, and I moved my chair up closer to the row where he sat. And when he would come out, I would say, oh, what a beautiful voice. I'm enjoying you so much. This is so wonderful to hear. And he would have his head down and out the front door. He was so shy and reclusive. But he got better anyway, and so we moved to, after the changes were all happening in the Episcopal Church, we moved to another Episcopal church in town because the bishop had closed our church. So we went to this other Episcopal church in town, and so I sat right in front of him in church, and I said, well, one morning he invited me to sit next to him, so I moved and I sat next to him. So the following Sunday I thought, well, do I go back and sit next to him, or do I take my own seat? And I said, I'm going to stay here, see what happens. If he looks uncomfortable, I'll go back to my next seat next week. Well, of course, he wasn't uncomfortable, so I stayed there. 2.5 years. 2.5 years waiting for this man to wake up. So I said to myself, well, one Sunday I got up and I said to myself, you know what? I'm praying wrong to the Lord. I'm not saying it the way it should be prayed. I didn't ask him. I didn't ask what he feels was right for me. Maybe this isn't the person that I've held in my heart so much. So that morning I went up to the altar, and I sat and I prayed, and I physically inside of me, I placed him back on the altar, and I said to the Lord, take him back. And if you feel that he's the right person for me, then I need a sign. Not just a little hint, but I need a serious sign. And so that morning, that was on a Sunday morning, on Friday, I get an email from him. And it said, I think we're not friends anymore. So I said, what's up? So he said, well, I think I'm falling in love with you. And I need to know how you feel. So I said to him, what took you so long? So we laughed about that. But anyway, he stayed, with me along the way as we progressed through our church things that were happening. Anyway, I opened, around that time, I had opened up my own beauty salon. And I had a friend of mine that I had worked with for about 28 years. Her name was Judith. And she and I really got along well. And so we had this wonderful salon together. And one Saturday evening, she had invited me to go to her. She belonged to the Congregational Church. And she invited me to go listen to a guest speaker they were going to have there. And it was Luis Palau, which I'm sure a lot of you know who he is. And on that evening, I was born again. And I gave my heart and my life to Jesus in a whole different way than I ever had before. I loved him always, my whole life I loved him, but something really changed on that day. It was very profound to me. So I went to, I was, after my newborn love of Jesus there. I put my heart and soul into the ministries that I felt the Lord was calling me to. And the things that I was good at was cooking and baking and whatever. So we would have brunches and things at the church, and I would put my energies into it with my sister. So it helped me a lot. And then during all of this time, of course, I was falling in love with him, and we were having a very loving and sweet romance, which was really wonderful, and so different from my first marriage, who was so cruel. Anyway, I never, I had started my prayer shawl ministry even before I was married, and I said, where can I stretch this further? I need to make this more than just prayer shawls. So I started making baby blankets, and then I started doing blankets for the veterans, and in every change that I made with it, it profoundly affected me. It made me feel like I was really doing God's work. I was helping him to help others. And when you help others, you help yourself. It's like I got as much gift back. And I also had all kinds of church outreach projects that I became so passionate about. Anything that was feeding the homeless, or doing anything that was making things for the less needy, the more needy. And then I finally wanted to talk about the point of tithing. When I first started tithing, it was after I had gone to the Episcopal Church where Vern was going, and I was terrified at first. I was alone. I was living in my own home, and just depending on my own income and whatever. And but I thought to myself, if I really truly believe in the Lord, I should just go ahead and just do what I think is the best for me. So what I did was I prioritized a little better, and what I did was I took that 10% of the Lord's money that came off the first of the month, period. Then anything else followed in its way. And somehow or other, I don't know how, sometimes I was really sure that there wouldn't be enough for the rest of the month, and somehow or other it was always there. I never had a problem and haven't since. And my husband and I married after married. Unfortunately, he always felt the same way about tithing as I did, so we live our life that way now. And we've had little rough spots every once in a while, but it always comes out, there's always enough. So if you give to him first and love him and put your heart in it, and that's the way it's gonna be the best for you. And so I just never gave up on God. I know that he was always going to be there in my life, and he was always going to be the reason that I did whatever I did, and that the most wonderful gift he ever gave me was a wonderful husband of mine. That was the most wonderful gift after the first one I had that was so devastating to me. So go ahead and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all the commands that I've given you. And he enriches our lives in more ways than we can ever say, as long as we give to the needy and help others, because that's where the Lord wants us to put our hearts to salvage and save others. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Lily. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For sharing with us. Let me pray with you again.
Sure.
Before you sit down. Father God, we thank you for Lily. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for what you've done in her life, what you are doing in her life, what you're doing in all of our lives. Give us eyes that see even more of it, all for your glory and honor and praise. It's in your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Well, it's hard to get up and share some things, about your lives and things like that. But I want to thank Lily, and I thank Carol, who did it last week as well. We are recording these things, so if I get permission, I'll put it on the internet. But if not, that's okay too. But we are in the midst of stewardship season, and so a letter went out this past week. If we have your address, mailing address, you should have gotten one. If you're a member, if you're just visiting or just kind of a friend of the church, you should have gotten one, but that doesn't always happen with our address thing. So if you did not get a letter this past week, for sure let me know. It came from Nancy, our treasurer. And so this coming week you should get another one from our senior warden, because not next week but 2 weeks from now we'll be receiving pledges so the vestry can work on its budget for next year. And of course, budgets, as you know, probably always have to go up rather than go down. That's always a better thing. Somebody told me a couple months ago, whenever, sometime recent, that Duke Energy was raising their rates sometime soon. Maybe they've already done it, I don't know, by about 11%. I think it was either 7% or 11%, I'm not sure which. It was a big hit. It's going to be a big hit for a lot of people. So anyway, that's just indicative of how things just keep costing more dollars. So begin to pray about it if you haven't already begun to pray about it. And let me follow up on Lily's sharing just a little bit based on this passage from Mark. It was interesting that our Christian Ed class today ended with Jesus going into the city of Jericho, which is exactly where our reading had us today. But if you were there, you noticed something. That is, it added something else. After it talked about the blind Bartimaeus, it also talked about Zacchaeus, if you're there. If you remember that, maybe from other Gospels, when Jesus went to Jericho, he did these two things. He met with Zacchaeus, and so that raises a question in a lot of people's minds: why didn't Mark include that? In my study, I think somebody gave me what I thought was a pretty good answer. I just want to show you real quick that if you were here last week, you might recall that there was a phrase used last week in the gospel reading that was used exactly again in this week's gospel reading. Last week's gospel reading began with a request by James and John, one to sit at the right hand of Jesus, one to sit at the left hand of Jesus. Before I got to that, they said to Jesus, "Teacher, what do you want us? We want you to do whatever we ask of you." And here's where the phrase gets repeated. And Jesus said to them, "What do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you?" He said the same thing to Bartimaeus. "What do you want me to do for you?" And here's where it gets a little interesting. In essence, James and John were looking for the seats of honor, weren't they? They wanted to be honored with Jesus. You know what the name Bartimaeus means? Son of honor. Bar means son of. Timaeus means honor. The disciples, Jesus is saying, in a sense, disciples, or Mark wants us to see, that the disciples at that point were just as blind as Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus was physically blind, but the disciples were spiritually blind. They needed sight just as much as Bartimaeus needed physical sight. And that may be true for us as well, to continue to increase in sight. And it takes faith. What did Jesus say? After Bartimaeus said, Rabbi, let me recover my sight. I want to be able to see again. He said, go your way. Your faith has made you well. And faith is not just intellectual acceptance of things, but it's living out. And that's what it says. Immediately recovered his sight and followed him on the way. Following him. That's trusting. That's faith. That's what Lily learned more about. That's what Carol shared about last week. Every one of us could share a story about how we've grown in the faith. And maybe some of us might be challenged to grow in the faith with respect to how we use our time, how we use our talents, and how we use our treasure as well. Right now, I think this congregation is facing a challenge for time and maybe talents as well, maybe time most especially. I've made reference to the Saturate USA program in recent weeks. If you haven't been here to hear that, it's where there's a program that seeks to get out to 60 million homes in the next 2 years. Some information about the gospel. And I was wondering, we tried to show a video 2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? We didn't have any sound for it. Samantha, are you ready to try that again? We'll see if we have sound this time. We did make some changes in the interim, so maybe it'll work this time on how we can maybe make a difference. Because this goes right along with Bartimaeus as well. Go ahead and hit play whenever you're ready. Whoops. Are we still missing sound? Got to be something with that computer then, because I had it before on a different computer. We're not getting the sound again. Never mind, turn it off. I guess I got to use that computer and get it set up. One of the things, getting back to the gospel real quick. In a sense, Mark was telling the disciples, tells us, the way he phrases it in another place, count the cost. Count the cost. What do you want me to do for you? Do you know? The previous section said, he asked them, are you able to drink the cup that I'm going to drink? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism that I'm going to be baptized with? And they said, yeah, we are. But really they didn't understand it. So here Mark is saying, count the cost, in a sense, using phrasing from a different part of the Gospels. Count the cost. I did a little bit of ciphering on this Saturate the program. There's 8,291 addresses right here in this section. Not all of 33884 zip code, but this section. And if we could form 10 teams of, it doesn't matter, 2 or 3 people, and if we wanted to try to have a goal of getting all those 8,291 addresses hit with one package, let's say before Easter of next year, it really only takes 38, passing out 38, each team passing out 38 of those packages each week between now and Easter. That's not all that much, but it does take 10 teams. So here's what I want to ask you with. As part of stewardship of time, I'm looking for 10 people that would willing to be the captain of each of those 10 teams. If you feel led to help with that, I need 10. If we can work with less, but I'm looking for 10 because we have 10 zones, that's why. If you feel led to help with that, let me know, okay? And we'll figure out how to move forward, how to plan it, how to get it put together, how to form the teams, and we'll move forward. So with that, a stewardship of time, a stewardship of talents, then yeah, it might cost us a little bit of cash because maybe we'll spend a little bit of gas money or things like that. Not probably a whole lot, but who knows? Primarily time and talents, I think. So if you'd like to help with that, especially being a team captain, let me know. But if you'd like to help in some other way, let me know as well. And next week I'm going to try a third time. You know, say third time's a charm?
Third time's a charm.
Hopefully. If I have to put a different computer back there to make it work. Otherwise I would have recorded it, put it on a flash drive, but I can't do that with that particular site. Thank you, Lily, for sharing. keep in mind what she has shared about how she experienced God's grace through her life, and may we be more faithful than maybe we have been in the past with all that God has given us with our time, talents, and treasure. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for your grace and mercy and your providence. Thank you for a computer that has sound that works. And I'm stepping out in faith that's going to work. But Father, you placed a wonderful opportunity in front of us. Because I think you want to bless this parish, not just bless this parish, but you want to bless every person in this 33884 zip code with the knowledge of Jesus. The knowledge that he died for our sins. And without him, we have a Christless eternity. And that destination is not very good at all. So give us your mind in all things. Bless us that we might be a means of you blessing others through us. And it's in your name, Jesus, we pray.
Amen.
Amen. If you please stand.